This is a demonstration of a time lock by the company Beard & Brother, and it dates from 1878 and is based upon two patents that were awarded to Phineas King. One was in February of 1878, and the other, upon which this is mostly based on, was awarded in March of 1878. The lock is currently shown in its on-guard position. In other words, the time lock would be running and the safe closed and the bolt thrown so that you could not dial in the correct combination to open the safe until the appointed hour. The time lock is equipped with two dials here, both going from 1 through 24. This dial to the left is used for setting the time lock, and this one to the right is used for the amount of hours you want the time lock to be off guard. And so the way that this works is this little lever here is what controls the bolt work, making it either on guard or off guard. This wheel here is equipped with two wipers, one here and one here. And as this turns, and I'll simulate the lock running by turning this, as this turns, one of these wipers comes in contact with this little curved sector piece here, this brass sector piece. And as that happens, it then raises this release lever here, and you now see that this has gone in an upward direction, and that then will release the bolt work. As it keeps going, then this will fall back and will then put this back on guard. But of course one needs to wind up the lock and reset it in order to do that. So let's say it's 6 o'clock in the evening and you want the safe to be allowed to be opened by 6 a.m. the next morning. Well, then what one would do is to turn this knob to where this pointer here is located at the number 12. Then the lock would be set up, wound up, close the door, and then this would then begin turning according to the two movements and would wind down to 0, at which point it would then raise this lever and unlock or put the time lock off guard. So as the time lock winds down to 0, then you see this mechanism then move upward and the lock is then brought off guard. Now, for the option of if the operator wanted the safe to remain closed over the weekend, in other words, a 48-hour period, he would simply move this to the left, which unlocks it. You notice we were always moving it clockwise before. So now this moves to the left, and you simply take one of these wipers and let it go all the way to this side, and then lock it down, and then it will always just hit this sector here, which is what controls the locking and putting it on and off guard. And when this goes by, it will do nothing. And I'll just have to lock it down a little there. So when this goes by, the lock is put off guard, and then when normally this wiper would be over on this side, nothing happens because it's not there. Now, another feature of this time lock is shown by the left-hand sector, which also goes from 1 to 24, and that is used to show how long you would like the lock to be off guard once you have set the time lock running. So let's say you're going to have a 10-hour day, and the time lock has come to 0, and the lock is currently off guard because you have it's wound to 0. So you then set this little sector here, which you can do by unscrewing this knurl a little bit, and then it slides back and forth. And you use the edge of this sector against this dial to determine how many hours you would like the safe to remain open. Here we have this set for 10 hours. So you can set this lock in the morning and forget about it because you're going to be working for 10 hours and it'll automatically go on guard after 10 hours. And that's demonstrated again by just simply moving this, and then after 10 hours this falls. It should just fall on its own, but it's a little bit sticky. Another feature that is demonstrated on this lock is a safety feature to prevent the lock from staying on guard should the time locks wind to 0 and it has not been set properly. And that is represented by this little cam here with the double commas. And what that does is when the timer winds down to 0, this goes up like so and automatically pushes this up no matter where these markers are, so that if it's all the way wound down, it will automatically keep the lock unlocked even if this has not been properly set. The other feature that this does is this little hook here automatically turns this comma every time this wipes this. Once, twice, so it's a little sticky, three times, and actually then 5, and it automatically advances this so that should the timers wind all the way down, again, it will automatically go to this part here and keep it from staying locked. Now, at the point that this has been activated, it can no longer fall down again once the wiper has passed this sector. So it is now permanently on an off guard position and cannot be put back on guard until the operator manually comes in and again winds the time lock. This problem of the arm being a little bit sometimes unreliable as far as falling was later on corrected when Mosler bought the Beard company a couple of years later and put over here a spring assist piston which pulled this downward to make sure that there was positive locking action on it. You'll also notice that there's only one cog ring here driving the dial. And it is in turn powered by the two carriage clock movements here and here, one through this and one through this. Should one become jammed up, it then would be still allowed to turn by the other one, because this would then just simply rotate freely on the ratchet if this were to become jammed. The same is true if this one became jammed. A potential flaw in this design in the Type 1 was this cogwheel here. There is a single wheel that attached to both of these here and here. Now, of course, if one timer should fail, because there is a ratchet on each of these, the lock would still continue to function. But if for some reason this cog were to become frozen, either through lack of lubrication or through somehow there be an entanglement between these wipers and this sector piece here, or for whatever reason, should this become jammed up, then both of these cogs here would become jammed and both timers would stop. And in that event, you would have a lockout, because since this timer here would also be stopped, this would not be able to wind to 0 and push this upward, thus putting the lock off guard. So that was a serious design flaw that was corrected in the Beard Type 2 time lock. Now here we have a Beard Type 2 lock, and if you turn it sideways, one can see that there are two cogs, one here and one here, and that is shown in their updated patent. And how this is driven is where you have the two gears here and here, now within a single E. Howard time lock movement, and one is attached to the outer cog and the other is recessed here and is attached to the inner cog here. And both of these cogs are now in turn attached to a spindle with a ratchet, so that should either one of these stop, the other one could still drive the cog. It's really the same principle as what was demonstrated in their Type 1, but has a little bit more of a safety feature in that it doesn't have to drag upon the other movement through the ratchet work directly connected to each of the carriage clock movements, but is done through this dial work here. And here we have a Mosler Model 1, which you can see is based largely upon the Beard Brothers design, almost not largely, identically. And what they did here is what I mentioned earlier. This little piston here is connected to the arm to provide a positive retraction, so that you don't have the issue of this not being able to move properly when it should fall.